Well, welcome to another Gareth A. Davies Fight Talk, and I mean it when I say I have the absolute pleasure of introducing the one and only Michael the Count Bisping, UFC middleweight champion, the only British fighter ever to win a world title in the UFC, pioneer, greatest DJ ever to live out of Clitheroe. No, but really, he's gone from almost the heel, the villain around fights to a cult hero in the sport. As he knows, winners never quit. And when he always says it on his own podcast, believe you me, this man knows what he's talking about. Michael Bisping, what a pleasure to have you on.
Gareth, as you know, we go back a long way now. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. Certainly, when you give me the introduction of all introductions, my friend, thank you very much. Come on, what is going on? How are you, Gareth? Nice to talk to you. And I love the shades, by the way. Very cool.
Thank you very much. Well, we've always said it. If it was my voice and your looks, we could have made another Bond.
Oh, my word.
I've got to ask you, first of all, you've been out a few years now, and you're very renowned. You're doing Hollywood movies. You're a brilliant commentator. You're very present when you're doing your commentary and your analysis. Has it been okay not fighting anymore?
Yeah, 100% would be the short answer. Obviously, I think all athletes, certainly fighters, they always worry about hanging up the gloves or going back to a civilian lifestyle, if you will. And certainly for me, when I got into fighting, options, there wasn't many. That's kind of what led me to it. I always knew I could scrap when I was a kid. I kind of just had that mindset, and that's what led me into it. I left school at 16. So I was always worried when the day comes, I did very well in the organization. I made some decent money and stuff. So I'm very lucky in that regard. But still, I'm going to work. And I'm like, what am I going to do when I retire? But it couldn't have gone any better. And people ask me all the time, they say, do you miss fighting? And the answer is no, I don't. I mean, of course, I have some amazing memories, that often. In fact, I don't spend a lot of time reliving my glory days. But because I commentate, it's the perfect job. I mean, I truly am passionate about my job. I love what I do. But it keeps me still part of the action. And I think if I wasn't commentating, then maybe I'd feel different. Because we know as fighters, as athletes, part of the allure is it's being center of attention. It's having we've all got egos. That's the way it works. But now I'm still front and center. I'm talking about the fights. I'm hosting the fights. I'm talking to the fighters afterwards sometimes. So I still get that fix, if you know what I mean. I'm still a part of the fight game. So yeah, coming out of retirement, number one, it couldn't be an option anyway. I've got too many injuries. But I probably would think I could still compete, but there's no need. I'm scratching that itch with the commentary.
It's whatever it is, 18 years ago that you started, 16 years ago in the UFC where you won the Ultimate Fighter. You mentioned, and it projected you, didn't it? And, I was one of the people following your journey at that point. It was an extraordinary journey, a long journey in many ways. We learned so much about you as you were learning so much about yourself. And as the sport was mushrooming around the world, you say you don't look back on good memories, but there must be one or two moments that stand out.
Oh, absolutely there is. Absolutely. I was very fortunate. I had a really good career, and I was always very lucky that I had the support of the UK people behind me and other parts of the world, but certainly the UK always stood out. So yeah, I certainly have some tremendous memories. Obviously winning the belt, that stands out as an obvious one, right? Everyone wants to do that, so that's easy. But
on 17 days notice as well, wasn't it?
17 days notice, there you go. I hadn't been training at all. I was shooting a movie in Toronto. But when I fought Anderson Silva in London, to me, I thought, because I at that stage of my career, I thought I'm never going to fight for the belt. I've got injuries now. I'm close to retirement. I'm getting older. I'm getting close to 40. And I looked at Anderson Silva. Everybody knows his resume. The greatest to ever do it, if you will. So to me, that was my world title fight. I thought I'm going to fight in London at the O2 Arena, the nation's capital, against the greatest fighter to ever do it. If this is my last fight, then I'll be happy with that. So I put everything into that training camp, and partly that's what got me through that fight, because it was a tough fight. So beating Anderson Silva in London was huge for me. And then obviously I fought for the belt and I won the belt, so that kind of trumps that. But then bringing the belt back to Manchester, fighting Dan Henderson at 6 o'clock in the morning,
Yep.
you know, and I was terrified for that, because I thought nobody's going to come out and watch a fight at 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock, whatever it was. So I was like, man, we're going to be in an empty arena. But fortunately, as usual, the British fans, they all stepped up and made it a night to remember. I don't think there was a sober person in the house, but they sure as hell made some noise.
There wasn't an empty seat in the house. I don't think there was a dry eye in the house either that night as well, you know?
Yeah. It was, talking of eyes, you know, my eyes were certainly bust up after that one. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, again, I was kind of glad that fight went down the way it did. You know, obviously the entire training camp was avoid the right hand of Dan Henderson, of course. But still, as my old boxing coach, Mark Kinney, used to say, you can't go in the rain without getting wet. You know, and that's his weapon. You know, he's built a career around it. He caught me with that in the first round, caught me in the second. Yeah. But as we know, I was able to turn it around and get the job done.
And a massive turnaround from where you were at, I think it was UFC 100, wasn't it? Where you'd lost to him. And you and I didn't speak for a year after that. We won't go into that today. We won't.
You've done it many times.
But the real listen, I've always loved and supported you, and I mean that. Yeah. From there all the way to what you just described, to the winning the belt on 17 days' notice, getting one back over on Luke Rockhold, just brilliant. You know, beating Anderson Silva. You'd always said to me, if I can't put I don't care what happens in the fight. Obviously, you want to beat Anderson Silva, but he's in my weight category. When I put my pipe and slippers on, and you're still a long way from that.
Yep.
You know, you're not a granddad yet, are you? Although your son Callum looks capable of fathering a few kids already.
Oh, mate, he's a beast. He's an
absolute... He is.
Go on, I'll let you finish the point.
Well, basically, that you'd always said to me, if I cannot step into the octagon with that man, Silva, with the Spider, I'll never be satisfied, because I'll know I've missed an opportunity, you know?
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right, because when I was competing as a middleweight, he was the long-time champion, and he seemed untouchable, and people thought I was crazy. I always felt I got a style that would match him pretty well. I thought I could beat the guy. You know, I thought I would be the man to beat him. Now, of course, Chris Weidman beat me to that. You know, but that was partly because Anderson was dicking around, pardon my language. But still, regardless, you know, I was very, very happy to still get that opportunity. You know, and the fight wasn't without its controversy and things like that, but that made it even better. You know, it obviously got me with that knee in the third round, almost killed me, but I was able to rally back round. But yeah, that was a proud moment. It really was, and I'll never forget it. I mean, that's why when I was getting interviewed after the fight by Dan Hardy, you know, I got a little emotional. I did, because it meant so much to me to beat Anderson Silva in London, and obviously the fight was a total war. You know what I mean? And I've still got scars and no doubt brain damage from that night right now. And just to be there with the Union Jack draped across me, with everyone in attendance cheering me on so much, yeah, it was a very, very special night for me.
You talk about. I want to go to somewhere serious. I mean, you talk about scar tissue and brain damage, and, you know, you fought the end of your career, you know, with serious damage to one of your eyes. You know, you are one-eyed now.
Yep.
You have an ocular implant that you sometimes decide to, yeah.
Go on then. I know that's what you want. Boom, there you go.
Oh, my word. Oh,
that's what the eye looks like. So obviously, I was trying to do a lot of acting work, still am. Nobody wants this person walking in to do the audition unless the character has a messed up eye. But still, with my arrogance, I was still trying to do it, you know, and I was working on TV, but it was very, you know, it affects your confidence. And it did affect my confidence, and I was very touchy about it. So in the end, I requested to get a glass eye from a doctor. I was going to have my eye removed. And when I went to see a specialist, he said, you don't need to have your eye removed. We don't want to do that unless it's the absolute necessary thing to do. He said, no, you can get a prosthetic, and as you can see, it looks pretty damn good.
It's amazing.
Best $3,000 I ever spent.
Yeah, and people watching this or listening to this, fighters or parents of fighters, of young fighters, you sacrificed that while you were fighting. You never knew that was going to happen to you. You fought on even when you were having terrible issues with it as well, because you knew that you still had the physicality and the presence and the balance and all those things from the years you'd been practicing as a martial artist and mixed martial artist. What do you think at the moment? There's so much criticism at the moment. Billy Joe Saunders, Saul Canelo Alvarez, Daniel Dubois, particularly in boxing at the moment, and it will come in MMA as well. People, because you were able to weather the storm, you didn't necessarily have fractures of the orbital socket or the cheek, but you had damage to the eye.
I did in the second Dan Henderson fight in Manchester.
You did?
Yeah. I was in there with one eye, but then in the first round, he fractured the orbital on this side. And there's pictures out there. It swelled up so badly. In the fourth and fifth round, I had to move my head around because all I could see was a tiny slit, and only on occasion I could see him. I couldn't see him all the time, and then it actually swelled up so bad after the fight that when I got back to my hotel room, I was temporarily blind. I couldn't see, and I was trying to shower. And Daz Morris, my Muay Thai coach, he came in and helped me out, and it was scary. I was crying. I knew it would be temporary, but still, just actually having blindness temporarily was very, very scary. Of course I saw what happened last weekend with Canelo and Billy Joe Saunders, and that was a shame for him, but I think the corner did the right thing. It's not something to play with. Of course, it's a shame. He wanted to win that fight. He did a lot of hard work in training camp, but you live to fight another day. It wasn't his night, unfortunately. No shame in losing to Canelo, and he was doing well. He was doing really well in the fight, but as I say, you live to fight another day.
You came out when you retired, and I thought it was a very poignant message you gave out to the fans, in which you said you don't realize how much pain we feel when we lose, or when things go wrong for us, or when we feel that we haven't produced what we wanted to produce, that you're damaged deep in your soul sometimes, in your spirit as a warrior. Do you think that it is getting too bloodlust, too brutal, on the social media sphere? Because you used to give it as well, of course. But you were promoting. You knew what you were doing in the end. You were promoting. But do you think we do need to have a look at the way, or at least fans should be more aware of what fighters are going through, if they can be?
Yeah, so what you're referring to, I think, is when my Hall of Fame speech, and I was talking there, and I just kind of went off on a tangent. I was speaking from the heart, and I was like, and listen, take it easy as well, because sport fans in general, not just UFC or MMA fans, boxing fans, whatever, sport fans in general are terrible, you know what I mean? And of course, they want their team to win. It's a little bit different with teams, but with individual sports, there's no team, it's one guy, and they're trying their best, and then obviously if you lose, and I'm not talking about their supporters, I'm talking about their detractors. They go online and they say all kinds of things, and they ridicule the fighter and they make fun of them. And I was like, try and take it easy, guys, because you don't know what these people are going through. And the UFC, they have this little thing sometimes, the thrill and the agony. It really is. It's the most rewarding sport in the world, or it's the cruelest mistress you could ever imagine. Because, you go out there and fight, let's say you fight for a world title, you lose, you're not the champ, the other guy's the champ. Your career is going the wrong direction. Maybe you've got injuries, and then you've got everyone out there online, and they're making sarcastic comments, they're making fun of you at your expense, and you tried so hard. You don't know what it takes to get to that position, the amount of sacrifices you have to make. I mean, you've been around combat sports for a long time, so but the average person on the street doesn't know the kind of sacrifices it takes just to get to that position, to be able to even have those conversations, so there's a lot goes into it. And I wish, sometimes people would have a better understanding and, ease up on certainly the guy that's lost. I think for the most part people do, but still there's trolls everywhere.
What do you think about YouTubers, or the mainstream, or these very famous YouTube celebrities and stars, as they are, coming into fight sports now, coming into boxing, and no doubt they'll come into MMA at some point?
Yeah, listen, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. They were saying, Jake Paul, he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, hold on a minute. I said, there's no rule that says you have to come from a disadvantaged background to compete in combat sports. Okay, so you forget that narrative straight away. Jake Paul, if that's who we're talking about, you know, he was very smart. He got involved in YouTube at an early age, and he's got millions of fans all over the world, and he's a wealthy man. Now, as he's got older, he's developed a passion for combat sports. You can't hate on that. He's got a passion for combat sports, and he's had 3 fights now. And to be honest, if he was a regular boxer, he's probably fought better competition now than what you would do in your first 3 fights. You know what I mean? Ben Askren was a champion of other organizations. Sure, not a boxer, and he's not a representative of mixed martial arts generally. He's a wrestler. But still, you know, in his 3rd fight, he's fighting somebody like that. If he was on a normal trajectory, you wouldn't be talking about former champions. So you've got to give the man his respect there as well. Now, on the flip side, I think it is kind of a sad state of affairs to see supposedly the greatest of all time chasing a bloody YouTuber around because he took his baseball cap off his head. I'm like, oh my God, it's turned into a little bit of a circus. But also on the flip side, you can't, you can't hate on what Jake Paul's done. You know, he's taken his fan base there and he's pivoted it and gone into combat sports. And listen, love him or hate him, as an entrepreneur, as somebody that's trying to get ahead in life, you have to respect that.
Another thing that's, because I want to come on to the British scene, another thing that's happened, we go way back where we fought for you to get recognized and noticed and seen. We knew you were a star rising. How do you feel now when you see because you work for BT Sport as well. I mean, obviously I've worked for them in the past as well. It's on BT Sport, it's very established. I'm working with Bellator as well. It's on the BBC iPlayer now. Yeah. Live. How do you feel when you see that for our country, that MMA's come that far?
It's beautiful to see. It really is. And I know I wasn't the first, but I was the most prominent back in the day. There was people.
The poster boy, don't you remember? You were the
you
hated being called the poster boy.
I
you were the poster boy.
I kind of guess so. I guess I was. You know, and it's great to see. And you know, I'd be lying and trying to be too humble if I didn't, you know, recognize that I had a part to play in that. And I know I did, but it wasn't just me, of course. You know, the UFC spent a lot of money, and there's a lot of other great fighters, you know, and they were very aggressively pursuing this market. But to see where it's at now, to see the recognition. I mean, here's a little way of putting it. When I got into mixed martial arts, none of my friends from Clitheroe knew what the UFC was. They didn't give a damn. They thought it was just some weird, you know, human cockfighting, as it was described back in the day. Now, and this is a weird gauge, but now on a Monday morning when I go onto Facebook, I have a personal Facebook page, and that's just to keep in touch with all my old mates and friends and family from Clitheroe. You know what I mean? I have a fan one, but my personal one is from my old mates back home. And on a Monday morning, I go to that, and they're all talking about the fights. You know, obviously my day's done, I'm retired, but they're talking about, oh, you see Adesanya at the weekend, or whatever the DC, or whatever the fight was. Obviously, a lot of big fan base for Conor McGregor. And when I see that, yeah, I'm very encouraged. I like it, and it gives me a little smile out the corner of my mouth. I'm like, it's nice. It's beautiful to see.
Well, look, when you say that, Forbes' rich list for 2020, I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh, yeah, I've seen it, yeah.
The top of it is a man called Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
$180 million last year. Obviously, some of that is fighting, some of it is his business. Yeah. Could you ever have imagined that the sport that we love would produce, or maybe you did imagine it would produce this way back when?
I don't think I did, if I'm brutally honest. You know, so you know, congratulations to Conor McGregor and Audie Attar at Paradigm Sports Management. You've got to take your hat off to them. I mean, Conor was some kind of, you know, lightning in a bottle. I don't think we're ever going to see anything like it for a long time. But the man took full advantage of the position he was in. He's done some controversial things over the years, but so what? So have I. You know what I mean? I'm not judging the man for that. But what
you've done a few controversial things on Nights Out with me. Never mind.
Mate, trust me. And I'll do a few more controversial things on Nights Out with you. Don't you worry about that. And I'll say dumb things still. But what he's done is incredible. And I remember, so to answer your question, I didn't think it was possible, no. And even a few years ago, I remember he was on the rich list, Forbes rich list, but he was like, I don't know, number 7 or number 8 or whatever, which is still a massive accomplishment or achievement. And he said, I'm coming for that number 1 spot. And I was like, no way, you're never going to get that. But God bless the man. You know, look at that. Look what he did. You know, it really is incredible. And it's a great sign. And I think Conor's success is going to attract more people because, you know, certainly out here in the States where I live, I miss England dearly, but, you know, I live out here now. You know, there's a lot of people, a lot of athletes or young athletes or people with athletic ability don't necessarily look at mixed martial arts as a potential path, as an avenue to go down to create riches for themselves and wealth for their family. You know, they go down NFL, NBA, things like that. But somebody like Conor McGregor coming in and doing that is going to inspire so many people, you know. So I think it's a tremendous thing.
I think he has inspired a lot of people. I think there is a generation that's inspired. And you know, fighters always, I mean, I think, you know, the president of the UFC, Dana White, always says it. Fighters have an odd screw loose. It's a calling. You know, I mean, I've been out on. It's reminded me of the nights we've gone out now talking about these things. But you know, no, it's always that thing. I think I'd rather be tucking you into bed at 2 a.m. than being out with you at 5 a.m. I'll just leave it at that. But hey, I don't regret a moment of us going out because you are always so much fun. And when you're here, and I've been out with you here, you are so loved when you're out, aren't you? People are. That's what I like when I'm around you and we're in Britain. And I had the privilege of being there at your Hall of Fame night as well, and it was a great thing to be at, Michael. Is that when you were in your pomp, I think you weren't as recognised, but you're almost more recognised now, you know?
No, I would agree with that. I mean, obviously, I'm very lucky. You know, I always had tremendous support. So, and anytime I talk about this, I always get a little uneasy because it's I don't want to seem like I've disappeared on my own backside because that's far from the truth. You know what I mean?
No, you've changed. Don't worry, you've changed.
Oh, I've changed. Yeah, I have changed for the better.
Yes,
I've grown up. I've grown up a little bit, fortunately. Well, it only took me 42 years, but I got there eventually.
You've also become, if I can say, to blow some smoke up your backside, because I interviewed you in the early days. I mean, you always were a very chipper guy, but you have become very eloquent as a broadcaster and a speaker as well. And that Hall of Fame speech for half an hour of it, off the cuff, when you stopped reading the monitor, the teleprompter, was an absolute, and I say this, I'm on a show with you, it was an absolute thrill to be there because it was like Michael Bisping speaking from a position of maturity, having gone through the wars to get there. And I thought you voiced that so beautifully, frankly. It was, you know, I mean, people like Ant Evans was there that night, who worked with the UFC and worked with you for years and years, who I'd worked with as well. It was just brilliant, Michael. Absolutely brilliant.
Gareth. Yeah, no, I truly appreciate that. And, you know, to be honest, at that moment, being there, inducted into the Hall of Fame, you know, when I was younger, you know, I don't want to talk bad about my parents because I love them dearly, but there was, you know, there was a bit of, it was a rough household, shall we say, you know. So when I was younger, I kind of thought, you know, violence was a normal thing. Do you know what I mean? So I did find myself getting into a lot of fights. And then, you know, I didn't have a big group of friends or nothing like that, but all I could, and I wasn't popular, but I could win fights. So that became my identity, you know what I mean? And that was all I could do. I couldn't play sports or nothing like that, but I could fight. I could beat anyone in a fight. And if you thought you could beat me in a fight, then I'd go to another town and I'd take on the cocker to school there or whatever, which is pathetic looking back. And I spoke about this at the Hall of Fame. But if you'd have said to that young man then and there, that one day you're going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame for the greatest fighting organization that ever existed, I wouldn't have believed you. So I was very proud because that was my identity, and it was a fault, of course. You know, it certainly was a fault, but I turned it around and I made it work for me. You know, so I had limited options, but I made something out of it. You know, I always say everyone has skills out there. Everyone's good at something. Everyone has a knack for doing something. You know, I figured out mine was fighting. Yours is growing long hair and wearing peculiar glasses. You know, we all have a skill, you know, but then you got to put in the hard work because a lot of people don't want to do that. That's the difference in anything. Like my first professional fight, I got paid nothing, but it's a means to an end. It's getting the ball rolling, you know, and that's how it is. And I think everyone, you know, of course you need a bit of breaks here and there. You need a little bit of luck along the way. And fortunately I had that. For me, luck was that as I was getting into mixed martial arts, UFC was exploding and they were looking to aggressively conquer the UK market. So I was in that position because of my fighting ability, but also I was lucky because the timing was right. Because there was other people like Ian Freeman and Lee Remedios and people like that came before me, Mark Weir. But the UFC wasn't being as aggressive in the UK. So yeah, so I recognize my own hard work, but I do recognize there was some fortunate timing as well.
Well, the overarching picture as well is what mixed martial arts genuinely can do for people and the world and change people, but also how it's now accepted. And we always said this, the perception of it has changed. But as I said, Bellator's 20 events this year are live on the BBC iPlayer. I remember when you were so popular, at the height of your popularity, you couldn't get voted on Sports Personality of the Year. And that was frustrating. But the brilliant thing is it's changed. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about current things.
Sure, please.
John Jones at heavyweight. Can he beat the likes of Stipe Miocic, Francis Ngannou, Derek Lewis and win the belt?
It's a possibility. It's a possibility. We're yet to see him at heavyweight. The only reason I say it's a possibility, of course, John Jones has just had an uncomparable career, to be quite frank, other than that weird disqualification. The guy's undefeated. Can he do it at heavyweight? Is he going to be the same person? Because, he's going to add on 30, 20 pounds, whatever it is. It's going to cost him. He's going to slow down. Everything, if you put muscle on or weight on, you slow down. If you lose it, you get faster, but you're not as strong. So there's always, there's a balance there. So is he going to be suited, at heavyweight? So until we see him in the octagon with one of those people that you mentioned, we really won't know. I would assume that he's going to do very well. I think it will, but we don't know. We don't know how it's going to affect his speed, his reactions, his timing. Is he going to be able to take people down like he could at light heavyweight? We don't know. Again, I assume that he could. I just want to see him in there sooner rather than later. I understand that he has his price and he's sticking to his guns, which I kind of respect. But also the UFC, but from what I'm hearing, I think DC said recently there was talk of $10 million. It's not a bad number. You throw some pay-per-view points on there as well. That's great. I think he's asking for $30 million. I think he needs to adjust his stance.
But they just need to build the fight a bit more as well, don't they? And that's what will build it into that. I think him against Ngannou, Jones against Ngannou is fascinating. Jones against Stipe is fascinating. Jones against Derek Lewis, I'm just probably going to do that. Do you know? But because the truth is, it's the biggest disparity in all divisions. It's a 60-pound disparity from 205 to 265, isn't it? It's an enormous change. Not so much in things like boxing, but it is in MMA, because you wouldn't say that John Jones was a power guy even in the light heavyweight division. He's just got an armory.
Definitely not.
Yeah, he's got an armory that's very difficult to get through.
He's not a power puncher. Simple as that. Yeah. He's a master of game plan. Yeah. He would take people down. He would elbow them to death, and get a stoppage that way. He would get submissions. He's got a very good kicking game. But again, other than, maybe I'm wrong here. I remember he knocked out DC with a head kick, but he's not really a knockout artist. He is a finisher, definitely a finisher, but not more through martial arts skill, as opposed to, you look at Francis Ngannou or Derek Lewis or even Stipe Miocic. He's not in the same conversation when it comes to power as those guys. He's not as dangerous with his hands. In fact, that was always one of the things, that was kind of a shortcoming, if you will, for John Jones, was that he wasn't the hardest hitter. Of course, he made up for it in other ways. So there's definitely questions at heavyweight, which makes it so intriguing.
It does, and we're going to see it at some point, because they are huge fights. Just those 3 fights I mentioned, him against those 3, is enormous. Back at lightweight or welterweight, whatever they're fighting at, does it matter that Conor McGregor wins against Dustin Poirier in their trilogy fight for the marketability of the UFC and McGregor himself at the moment?
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, McGregor being at the helm, if you will, being so successful as he is, as we said before, it inspires people. And it's great for the organisation. He's by far the biggest earner the company's ever seen. You look at the top 10 pay-per-views, there's the McGregor name in 6 of them or 7 of them, which is just incredible. I think the biggest factor for McGregor winning this fight is for his legacy, not so much the UFC. I mean, the UFC always has stars, and then someone else always comes along. There was Chuck Liddell, there was Tito Ortiz, there was Ronda Rousey, there was George St. Pierre, Conor McGregor, Israel Adesanya now. Do you know what I mean? There's always, they can create stars. If they can fight, and certainly if they've got personality, with their massive PR machine that they have, they can create stars pretty quick. Of course, as we said, Conor's something different, but the biggest play for Conor here is for him, you know, because of course, he has fabulous wealth now. You know, money will never be a concern as long as he plays his cards right. We also, Mike Tyson, you know, I don't think that's going to happen, but, you know, money shouldn't be a concern. But there's one thing that money can't buy, and that's the UFC championship. You know what I mean? And we know Conor, right? He's obsessed with fighting, and that's what made him so successful. And when he came into the UFC, he set his stall out as being the two-weight division champion, which he did, being the greatest ever and all the rest of it. Just lately, his performances aren't really correlating with being the greatest to ever do it. And I say that with respect. I'm not trying to talk smack about him. Me and him have had a couple of issues over the years, but I respect what he's done. I respect, you know, the career he's had. It's impossible not to. But I'm just saying for him, that's what he wants. And if he loses to Dustin Poirier again, you know, that's 2 losses in a row to Poirier. He got stopped by Khabib. He got stopped by Nate Diaz. You know, obviously they lost to Floyd Mayweather, but that wasn't a bad thing.
No.
You know, so
he was never going to win that fight, Michael.
No, exactly.
You know that.
Yeah, no.
But it was a brilliant event. It was a brilliant event. It was amazing. Amazing.
Incredible. But still, for him, so the consequences for McGregor if he loses aren't dire, because he'll always be a draw. He can always make money. But the narrative of him potentially being a champion again, or being one of the best to ever do it, that starts to fade away. You know, so there's a lot riding on this fight for Conor. Not in terms of career, not in terms of greatness, not in terms of even legacy, really, because he's already set that legacy. But in terms of where he's at currently in the fight game, you know, and if he was to lose, then maybe he could retire. You know, I'm not saying he would. I don't think he would. I think he enjoys the thrill of it too much. But if he did, then he could walk away with a legendary career and, you know, the most successful mixed martial arts that ever lived.
Will we see Conor McGregor fight Khabib Nurmagomedov at some point?
Never again. Never again. Khabib's not coming back. Khabib's not coming. I was just asked this recently on BT Sport. They said, if Michael Chandler wins at the weekend and becomes the champion, would that be enough to tempt Khabib? I was like, never in a million years. Think about it. Chandler has 5 losses on his record. You know, so it's not like that's something that's never been achieved. If he was undefeated, maybe. But Khabib's a man of honor. He made a promise to his mother, and I really respect that. The man's very wealthy. He's world famous. He's been there, done it, got the T-shirt. He retired undefeated, you know, and his father, sadly, is no longer around. Yeah, I don't think Khabib will ever fight again, regardless whether it's Conor or Chandler or whoever it is. I don't think we'll see him again.
Conor versus Chandler is a good matchup.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a very exciting fight.
Listen, as I said, me and Conor had a couple of things here and there. It was all very silly, really, nothing too personal. But Conor versus anyone's a good fight. You know, the UFC is a better place with Conor around. He's incredibly exciting. He is. There's nobody that brings excitement like Conor, and that's what results in the pay-per-view buys, because people get excited. You know what I mean? He injects entertainment. It's as simple as that.
Talking of fantasy fights, a prime Israel Adesanya against a prime Michael Bisping. What happens? Bell rings, what happens?
Well, I mean, of course, I'm going to say I win that fight. But you're putting me in a difficult situation here. I don't want to disrespect the champ. He's done phenomenal things as well. Israel Adesanya is amazing to watch.
He's so theatrical, isn't he? It's incredible. Yeah. And tough as nails.
He's an incredible showman. He's got incredible skills. And
we saw his toughness against Gastelum, didn't we? We really saw it. We really saw it in that fight. That was the fight where
he's not just a show pony.
Yeah, exactly.
The man's a fighter.
He is.
You know, in fighting, and I've said this about Conor, and again, I'm not trying to criticize him, but you've got to be able to be a good hammer and a good nail. You know, some people they're great at being the hammer. They're great at when it's going their way. But when they become the nail, they kind of wilt. You know what I mean? And they don't fight back. You know, Adesanya showed that he can be both. You know what I mean? He can do that. And not everybody can. Not everyone can. Not everyone can, you know, get beat up for a few rounds, but then have the mental capacity to say, okay, well, that's in the rearview mirror. We've still got time to change this. You know, that's what true champions are made of.
I want to go on to Hollywood career and all of those kind of things, and action hero. But I'm going to ask you to come full circle. We've got some great fighters in the UK. They grew up adoring you. You were a hero for all of them. Young Tom Aspinall at heavyweight. What an opportunity. I want to talk about these three. Leon Edwards, who faces Nate Diaz in a couple of weeks' time, who I think is arguably the pound-for-pound number one in Europe at the moment, Leon. He's just got a lot of skills. Obviously, he's lost to Kamaru Usman already, the UFC welterweight champion, but he's getting very close to his title shot, I think. And also Darren Till, yeah? Now, let's talk about Darren Till and Leon Edwards first. Can these guys follow in the wake of you and win world titles?
I'm going to go one better, and I honestly believe that all three of them that you mentioned could become champions. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. Listen, for Leon Edwards, he lost to Kamaru Usman. It was earlier in his career, and he's got better and better and better with every single fight as an athlete, as a fighter, in terms of his intelligence, his game plan, his approach. And the situation that he's in right now with Nate Diaz is the perfect situation, because the only thing that hurts Leon Edwards is that he's outside of the UK, he's not particularly known. The average UFC fan, Leon Edwards, is a name they're not too familiar with. Well, if he goes out there and he beats Nate Diaz, everybody in the States that watches UFC will know that name, because Diaz is a superstar, right? And I firmly believe Leon Edwards is going to make a mockery out of Nate Diaz. He's going to beat him very, very easily. Rory McDonald beat the crap out of Nate Diaz, and I see a similar fight. He's just too big, he's too strong, he's too gifted, he's too precise with his strikes. Nate Diaz
underrated till people get in with him. Maybe.
Yes, 100%. But I tell you what, when he goes out there and has the showcase that I think he will against Nate Diaz, then he's going to fight for the belt. And I think also it's genius by the UFC, because if he does beat Nate Diaz, listen, give Nate his respect. He's a tough guy. He's a tough guy, but I firmly believe Leon will win. Well, then Leon, not necessarily will be a star, but he will be world respected for his skills. And then therefore, it's a title fight pretty soon. Now, against Kamaru, who knows? That's a different kettle of fish. Darren Till, same thing. He's only 27 years old. Yeah, he had a few losses recently, but razor close ones to the best people in the division. Robert Whittaker, that fight was super close. Look how good Robert Whittaker looked against Gastelum recently. I mean, what a performance he put on. So that speaks volumes about Till's ability. And he's only 27 years old. He's getting better and better all the time. I said to Darren, and I spoke to him, and I said, listen, I hope you don't get offended when I say this. I said, but the only thing that I see missing in your game is boxing footwork. I said, you have all the tools. You're a tremendous striker. You got the speed. You got good takedown defense. You're a good athlete. You're always in shape. But Thai boxers are very static. They stand in front of one another. And he's a Thai boxing purist. Whereas a boxer, the boxer does a lot of moving out, the cutting angles, the pivoting. I said, all you've got to do, in my humble opinion, Darren, and please, it is a humble opinion, just got to add in some boxing drills. Go
and work with Perillo for 2 months.
Yeah. Or Mark Kinney. Mark Kinney in Liverpool used to have me doing some tremendous footwork drills. Yeah. But the point I'm making is, Darren, it wouldn't surprise me if he's champion again down the line. And Tom Aspinall, my God, what a prospect. I mean, this man,
young heavyweight, 28 years old, he's just beaten Andrei Arlovski. He's got a lot about him, and he's been around it all his life, hasn't he? And he's from your area. He's from Manchester, isn't
he? He's from Wigan. He's just down the road from Clitheroe. I used to go there back in the day. And many a good night out in Wigan. So I know it well.
Doing that?
Yeah. Tom, what an athlete this guy is. He's an absolutely gigantic man. He moves like a middleweight, incredibly fast, incredibly powerful, very, very humble. His dad trains him. They come from a martial arts background. And again, I'm not just saying this because I'm speaking to you and the people are going to listen to this in England. But Leonard, I'm very proud to be the first and only British champ, but I firmly believe I'm not going to be the last. And I'm not just saying it. There's a very good possibility that in the future, all three of those people become a champion. Also, Arnold Allen. Arnold Allen is flying under the radar as well, but Arnold Allen is doing tremendous things as well.
Yeah, and finally on Aspinall, the weird thing for him, I spoke to him recently, Michael. He was on the show, and he said, the thing with me is, I don't want to go up the rankings too quickly because I want the kind of
Yeah.
octagon time, cage time experience before I'm suddenly in a really busy fight week where I've got media obligations. Well, he and I were talking back about it. Like if he's in a title eliminator suddenly, it's a whole new ball game. And then in a title shot, so as you well know, it's a whole new ball game. You're carrying the promotion. You know, there's a lots that can go on. I know it's about the fight, but there's a lots that can go on mentally and psychologically in that week. And he sounds so sensible, so switched on as to how he wants to do it, you know? And
Yeah.
that heavyweight division, Michael, you only need 3 wins where he is at number 12. And like, if they're significant, you're starting to be talked about, aren't you? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I had him on my podcast and I asked him, I said, the only danger of Andrei Arlovski, now, of course, Andrei hasn't been championship material for quite some time, but the guy is certainly a journeyman and a staple of the heavyweight division. I think he won the belt twice. I said, if you beat Andrei Arlovski, then you're on everyone's mind. People are talking about you then. I said, are you ready? Are you ready to ascend that quickly through the rankings? And he said it's something my dad and I have spoken about, you know, and it is kind of a double-edged sword. You want to beat Andrei Arlovski, but it's also going to throw you into the mix a little quicker, you know. So fortunately now as well with the UFC, people do take their time more. It used to be when the roster wasn't quite as full, you know, there's over 500 people now. When it was like 200 people, you know, there wasn't as many people there. So, you know, you sign with the UFC, good luck, you fight Chuck Liddell back in the day. Do you know what I mean? But now, you know, you reduce, you know, there's a ranking system from 1 to 15. If you're not ranked, then you don't fight somebody ranked. So there's a much better path these days. And Tom's walking that path just fine.
Final thing today, and I want to get your take on it as well. Who's the best light heavyweight in the world?
Who's the best light heavyweight? Okay, so who's the champion right now? The champion is Jan Blachowicz.
You've got Vadim Nemkov in Bellator.
Bellator, correct.
You've got Ryan Bader, who's really at the top of his game, who's the Bellator heavyweight champion and is now in their tournament. Corey Anderson's over there. Rumble Johnson just had a great fight. You've got, well, obviously, because John Jones is, I still think John Jones is peerless if he wanted to fight.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, the reality is, it's John Jones. Jones, okay, if we assume that he's out of the conversation because he's gone to heavyweight, I don't know. Ryan Bader is certainly one of them. You know, Daniel Cormier is retired and he was at heavyweight anyway. Yuri Prohaska is new blood in there, but I'm excited to see what he does. Alexander Rakic, again, similar kind of guy. Glover Teixeira does a, you know, listen, I really
Ageless.
like that. Yeah, I really like Jan Blachowicz, and I think he's a tremendous fighter. And obviously, he deserves to be mentioned as well. It's almost sacrilege not to mention him. But that's a tough fight against Glover Teixeira. Glover has been looking ridiculous lately. He's just so tough and so skilled with it. So to answer your question, I don't know, Gareth. Okay. There you go. You got me.
I was trying to get you to talk about kind of like crossover and almost kind of lead into, it will come a time that we'll wish that different organizations' champions could fight each other because everyone's getting a bit stronger, that there is more free agents around. Maybe that's a discussion for another time. But if there is one thing, you know, that you would like to see maybe evolve and change over the next few years, 5 years, 10 years, what would that be in the sport that we both, and you particularly, love and have excelled in?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, you know. It's hard. I don't really want to get into the politics side of it, you know what I mean? Obviously, I work for the UFC, so it's hard. Like, so Mark Goddard was trying to tell me some things recently. It's like, well, I need to know my place. I'm not an official, you know, and I'm not running an organization. I'm a former fighter. I'm a commentator. So to a certain degree, you got to know your place. Fighter safety is always paramount for me. You know, USADA have done a great job of cleaning up the sport, but there's still a long way to go. People still cheat. You know, it's still in human nature, unfortunately. But we'll talk off the air, Gareth. We'll talk off the air.
Brilliant. We always talk off the air. The best stories, well, don't want to say you never tell, but the best stories just are out there in the ether. Michael, it's been an absolute privilege and a pleasure to speak to you. You are a brilliant person, a brilliant fighter, and you are a brilliant representative in the sport for both yourself, our country, and all the fans out there. Thank you so much.
No, that's really, really, really kind, Gareth. You know, and I'm involved with a project actually called The Journeyman, which is a movie that we're making, and it's about a journeyman boxer. It's based on a book by Mark Turley, and hopefully we're shooting that in Manchester. Hopefully this autumn or winter. And it's a really great. The script is the best script I've ever read in my life. It's a very touching story about a boxer who develops CTE, sticks around the fight game for too long. It's not a rare story. We see it happen quite a lot, but some of the proceeds from the movie will be going to a charity to help boxers that have fallen on hard times. So I'm really excited about that. So keep an eye out for that one. But Gareth, it's always a pleasure talking to you, my friend. And you're right, we do go back a long way over the years, and hopefully many more years to come.
And I will be there. It's October the 19th at the O2 Arena, isn't it?
There's a few dates. So we're doing Manchester, London, Glasgow, Dublin, and then due to popular demand, we added Birmingham to that list as well. So yeah, I'm doing like a show, if you will, it's called Tales from the Octagon. So I do a podcast with a stand-up comedian, Luis J. Gomez. He's absolutely hilarious. So he's going to do a stand-up set, warm the crowd up, then he's going to invite me out onto the stage and we'll tell some stories, some stuff behind the scenes in the fight game, from losing an eye to sleeping in my car to becoming champion of the world. I did it in Toronto a couple of years ago. Just kind of fell into place. And I was nervous as hell. Of course, in true Michael Bisping fashion, I didn't plan it or write it. We just kind of winged it. And it was great. I had such a laugh and everyone loved it. Everyone had a really good laugh. So afterwards, I was like, I've got to bring this to England. But of course, we had a pandemic. And of course, I'm a fighter, so I've got the best organization skills. Fortunately, some partners came on board that are better at organizing things than me. So they put all this together. And we're writing the show. It's great. I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I will definitely be there. Michael, the Count himself. I'm Gareth Davies. You've been watching Fight Talk with the one and only Michael the Count Bisping. Thank you, mate.
Thanks, Gareth. Appreciate it, buddy.